Okay, so I have before me a 2015 Road Glide. We've been making application-specific handlebars for this model since its release. We're going to show you the different styles of handlebars that we make for this, why they're application-specific, and how you mount them so you can do it yourself. One question that we get a lot on these bikes is, will 13-inch rise fit with the stock hydraulic lines and stock wiring? And they do. We get phone call after phone call, day after day, questioning us on that. So I decided to just go ahead and make a video, show you guys exactly how we're getting it done. If you have one of these bikes, you're aware of how bad the factory pullback is and how much these stock bars suck. There's no other way to put it. They're just awful. So this is the lineup for our 2015 Road Glide handlebars. Here's a set of 13-inch standard apes. We make all of our handlebar styles in an 11, a 13, and a 15, and we can do custom sizes upon request for an additional charge. This is our Friscoed bar. This is shown here in an 11-inch. This is what we call our Naked Ape. This is shown in a 13-inch. And this is our Holy Roller bar, also a 13-inch. This will be the set we're going to be putting on this particular motorcycle. On all of our bars that are welded in the corners like this, we use billet end caps that are machined out on a CNC machine. It makes it a lot easier for you guys to get the wiring ran internally through these bars. Plus it finishes them off nice. So we'll show you actually from start to finish how to remove the old handlebars, how to install the new ones, how to pull the wires through, how to hook everything up, how to unpin your twist grip sensor wiring, how to put that all back together, how to make it all reach with stock hydraulic lines up to a 13-inch handlebar. So stay tuned for that, and we'll get going with it. All right, here's a quick rundown of the tools you're going to need to do this job. A 12mm wrench, a ratchet with an extension, a 1/4-inch Allen socket, a 25 and a 27 Torx bit. You could use T-handle style if that's what you have. I'll probably end up using both styles before this video is over. A small flat blade screwdriver, pair of side cutters, 7/8 wrench, your ignition key, and last but not least, a Molex pin disconnect tool. Move this over here so you can see it better. Now this little guy here, he's not really necessary. You can actually do this with a straightened out paper clip if you prefer, but if you've ever done this job, you'll know how much easier life is if you have this. Alright, so the first thing we got to do is get the tach and the speedometer off of this thing, which entails removing the ignition switch and these two screws here. There's one just like this on the other side. I'll show you quick, using your key, how easy it is to get this ignition switch out. First, put your key in the unlock position, then turn your key all the way to the left. Underneath this corner there's a little button, and I'll show it to you after I get this out so you can see where it is. But you push up on the button, down on the key, and to the left, and it'll slide right up out of there. Right here's the little button that you gotta push. Then with your 7/8 wrench, you will loosen the top nut. Remove the nut, and then remove this collar underneath. And with a T25 Torx socket, you will remove both of the side screws. Now you just lift this up out of place, and you'll be able to get to the plug on the back, right there. You might have to use a small flat blade screwdriver to release the locks. Try to do this so my hand's not in your way. On both sides. I ended up just using my thumbnail there. And then there's two more plugs down low that you just... So that gets your whole speedometer and tack assembly out of the way so you can get to everything else you need. Alright, so now you need to get the old handlebars off and out of the way. We're going to remove the hand controls off of both sides and the clamp in the middle to get these out of the way. One of the biggest tricks on these 14 street glides and 15 and 16 road glides is getting this button here off, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. We get a lot of phone calls on this on how to do it. So all you have to do is grab a hold of it and kind of wiggle it and pull it to the left. And it'll just slide right off of there, allowing the rest of the clamshell to come out of your way. Next, we'll remove the two screws with the T25 out of the back of the clamshells. And they don't come out all the way out. They just come till they're loose. There's one on the bottom. Now that'll come out of your way. And then with a T27, you can remove the big clamps. I'm going to show you a neat trick here on what to do with this so you don't scratch up the bike with this hand control. This is the Crown Royal bag. You can just slip the whole hand control in the bag and hang it off your front turn signal. Now this will slide off. You will need a small flat screwdriver to release the switch. Come in right here. Let's pop that guy up. I'll get a better shot of this here in just a second. You can see that this is how this was. It just clips on there. So, get the old grip out of the way. Then you do the same thing on the other side. Now this side, the throttle sleeve, throttle grip will actually fall off in some cases once you remove these two clamshells. So just be aware of that so it doesn't fall on the floor and scratch your grips up. Once everything's somewhat loose, just go ahead and get that out of your way. Crown roll bag on this side. Hang it off your turn signal. You can actually see this wiring clip a little bit easier on this side, how to get this apart. And the camera doesn't want to focus very good, but it's right there. Alright, now you just got to unplug the wires that come out of the handlebars. So you've got your throttle by wire plug here. And then your switch wiring is nicely organized on this piece of plastic here. So just unhook those and get those out of your way. Try to do it with a screwdriver so you can see better where I'm pushing here. You can just use your thumbs though. And then you remove the 4 Allen bolts. This is the 1/4 inch Allen bit. I'm actually having somebody hold the other side of the handlebars right now so they don't fall down when you take that last bolt out. So be aware of that. Remove the top clamp. And now the handlebars can just lift out and come out of your way. Now something that you've probably heard of, especially at dealerships or whatever, is this pin right here. We don't put a hole in our handlebars for that pin. If we did, it would limit you to where you could rotate your handlebars to. And really, with these big 1 1/4 bars and so much surface area contact with these big clamps, it's really not necessary. We haven't had any problems with the handlebars slipping or anything on our own bikes. Okay, I'm going to show you what you can do with this pin to get it out of your way. What I did on my bike, the first one that we did, I just grabbed that pin with a pair of vice grips, wiggled it back and forth, and pulled it out. Since then, I've found an easier method. Let's take a hammer and a punch. Tap it down until it's below level. Okay, so we're going to show you guys how to get all the old wiring from your switches out of your old handlebars and into the new ones. The late model micro switches have very small connectors on the ends of the wires. These actually fit through the handlebars, so you don't have to unpin these, which is nice, unlike the older models. But, however, your twist grip sensor plug does not. So you will have to unpin this, and I'm going to show you how to do that so you don't have to cut and solder and all that. It's actually quite simple. I'm going to use this Molex pin disconnect tool because I have it. A lot of guys just straighten out a paper clip and use it. If you're going to do more than one set of handlebars, just buy one of these. They are about $50, but they work on, I believe it's 08 and up models, and a lot of those you got to use this type of tool for all of your switch wiring, so it might be worth it to you if you're going to do a lot of this stuff. You can just straighten out a paper clip and do this job. I mean, on the newer Road Glides, it's only 6 wires you have to unpin, so a paper clip will do it for free. Alright, so this is how you get this connector apart. This white piece of plastic here, as you can see, it's pretty well flush right now. It sets in there a little bit, but it's more or less flush with the top of this black plastic cap, and you need to raise that up a little. So you just come in with your flat blade screwdriver, pry that guy up. It pops up, a quarter inch or so. You can see that it's actually sticking out of there. And then you'll notice that these holes where your pins are have got a small round hole next to it. So you got a flat hole with a small round hole next to it. And what you'll do is you'll drop your paper clip or this tool down into that round hole, and you'll push down, you'll actually hear it click, and that's going to release the pin. So while you're holding that down, you come around to the other side and you grab that wire and you just slide it out. And what I do is take a picture of all of these wires and where they go with your cell phone or something first, so you know you put them back in the right place. Bad things can happen if you don't, but just go along then and unpin all 6 of these. It's very simple. And kind of take note which way they go back in as far as rotation. You'll see there's a little tab on the top, and that needs to go away from center when you're putting it back together. You can get a hold of the thing here. There you go, you got it out. Now, this will all fit through when you're pulling your wires out. So I'll flip the handlebars over. And you can do this one of 2 ways. The way I like to do it is pull both harnesses out at once. On the throttle side, you're going to have your twist grip sensor harness, which is the one we just unpinned, and you're going to have your switch harness. You can pull them out separate. I prefer to do them both at the same time. It just kind of depends on what's going on. Biggest thing is be careful pulling on your twist grip sensor on its way out so you don't damage it. If you damage that thing, you're not going to know it till you get it all back together, and then you're going to be mad because you're going to have to redo the whole job and go spend $100 and some bucks at the dealership for a new one. So you need to get that twist grip sensor up out of the handlebar and try to feed the wires into the handlebar at a faster rate than you're pulling them out. That way you're not putting a bunch of stress on the bars, or on the wires, I mean. And just go along and feed them in a little bit, pull them out. And eventually they'll come out. Same thing on the other side. This side will be a little easier because there's just the one harness. And that's that. So now we'll show you how you get them back in our handlebars. And we're going to show you a really neat trick how to do it on the Holy Roller and the naked style. A lot of people call and want to know how to get them around those 90-degree corners, like on this set of handlebars. And our removable end caps really make that slick, how they just come out. That way you can get right to the wires. Then when you're all done, you end up gluing these back in, but it's simple. Alright, so here we are. We're going to show you how to pull the wires through these handlebars. I'm going to give a quick rundown of what's going on with these bars first and why they're made the way they are. You probably noticed the gussets look weird. This is the gusset on this particular model of Holy Roller bar. If you look at the rest of them, this comes all the way up, welds all the way across the bar. There's a reason for that on the 2015 Road Glides. And I'll show you here in just a second. And the reason that we build them this way is for these weird clamps that Harley put on these bikes that have this weird tongue hanging off of them. Also the hole. You might wonder, why is that hole there? You might have noticed that when we took the old bars off, that there was a hole in them as well. These clamps have this pin right here. So we've got them designed so that clamp fits through that groove and lands in that pin, and that's why they're made the way they are. When it's all together, you barely even notice. Okay, so this is the easiest way to wire these handlebars that I found. You're going to want to start out, take your twist grip sensor first and run it into the end of your handlebar. Go ahead and pull it out through the switch wiring hole. I know that's not where it goes, but just bear with me here. This little guy here, this other little wire in this harness, is for heated grips. So if you don't want to fight it and you're never going to put heated grips on your bike, cut it off. Something else I've noticed that helps, get rid of these guys. They're just bulk inside the handlebar that you don't need. Okay, now that you've got that pulled through, go ahead and pull it down into position, like so. And hold your switch wiring up about where it needs to be. And what you want to do here is hold the two wire harnesses together where they're both going to be. Your twist grip sensor is obviously where it's going to be. Just kind of get close with your switch wiring itself, and then string the two out. And when you get down here to the end, you'll see they're not the same length, but this will help you pulling them through together. This way you know you're not going to end up with a bunch of slack inside the handlebars. Then tape the two harnesses together. Try to do it in a fashion where you've got some stuff staggered. That way you're not getting too much bulk for going around these corners. Now, pull the twist grip sensor back out, being very gentle all the way. This green plug right here can pull apart while you're pulling these through the handlebars. It can pull apart here, it can pull apart here, it can pull apart here. you can actually pull too hard and damage where you're pulling the wires actually out of this. And again, you won't know until you get the whole thing back together, and then you're going to be pissed. So, get this slid back in a ways. And now you can take, I'm going to put a little piece of tape right here just to hold this in the right direction. And it wouldn't hurt to put a little piece of tape over the end of the wires, actually just to keep them together so they don't try to fold over backwards as you're shoving everything through the handlebars here. Go ahead and stick them up in there and pull them straight out the end. Now you'll be pulling both harnesses together at once all the way through. This is where this gets some people. You don't want to just try to make this first corner with the wires. Take them right out the end cap hole, pull them all the way out straight, get rid of all the slack, get the twist grip sensor and get the switch where you want it before you try to make that corner. It will make your life a whole lot easier. So now we're just going to pull both harnesses through together, get them in position where they go. Twist grip sensor there. This guy goes there. And now I'll show you a trick to do the rest of it. Alright, the next step is pulling your wiring down the upright tube. Usually what I use is a piece of wire, welding wire, something along those lines. But I'm going to show you how to do it with a string and a nut today. Just because this is probably more likely for you to have around your own garage. So all I've done here is taken a nut and tied a string to it. What you do is just drop the nut down the upright tube, let gravity take over, pull it out the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing down here at the bottom that we did at the top. Instead of trying to make the corner, we're going to actually just pull the wiring right out the end of the tubing here. So kind of get that in position. Then you will tape the string to the wiring and simply pull it through the handlebars. It is going to get a little tight on this corner because there's this green plug for your twist grip sensor. There's a black plug in here for your heated grips, which you can eliminate if you're never going to run them and save some room inside the handlebars. Just cut those caps off. It's not going to hurt anything. I do that a lot on my own stuff because I'll likely never run heated grips, but you know, whatever. I'm going to take this tape off here that we put on there previously. And kind of wrap your string around your wires. Tape them on there good and tight. I like to wrap them around pretty good, that way we know we're not going to pull them, pull them off as we're pulling them through the handlebars, because then you got to dig them back out of there and that sucks. Alright, so there's that. And a lot of times what I'll do down on this end then is tie a knot, a hoop or something, just so you got something to actually grab onto to pull with. And then just start feeding the wires down the upright tube. Now you're going to have to make sure, keep the wires coming out higher. You don't want to end up looping this end over the top of these and more or less creating a knot going down the corner. You want to keep this underneath your other wires where they come out they're at the top. Hopefully this is in the camera. Okay. So I'll just kind of start it down in there by hand. Start pulling her through. You'll have to kind of feed them in the top as you're pulling them through the bottom. And that section right there where you've got the two wiring harnesses taped together, that's going to be the biggest trick getting it around that corner because it's bulky. A lot of guys have told me that they pulled them through separate. I don't do it that way. You can. Just anything to eliminate the risk of unplugging this green plug inside the handlebars is worth it to me. So that's why I try to pull both harnesses through at once. And here we go, it's already starting to come out the bottom. And the other side will go so much easier because you've only got this one little itty bitty wire to pull through the left side. But just kind of got to work it until you get it to come through. And I'm being gentle not to actually pull this harness here apart. Now, a trick that I've found to be helpful when you get this far here, I've got both harnesses sticking out here on the bottom. As you can see, we've got our twist grip sensor harness and our switch harness here. This plug is not going to make this corner going around a loop like that. You're going to have to slide everything back out this way, get that green plug so it's about right here, and then start working it around the corner. You might have to reach in there with a hook, grab the wires, kind of pull them through a little bit, whatever it takes. So just take your time and don't get rammy with it so you're not tearing anything up. And eventually you'll get them pulled through. Once you've got those pulled through here, then you do the same thing on the bottom end, where you will loop this back around, put your string in through this way and pull them out the hole in the front. Alright, so the hole in the front of the handlebars for the wiring to come out faces forward instead of down. That just works a lot better on road glides with the way the clamps are designed. So the next step is do the same thing. Drop your string down. There it is. Now I've got the twist grip sensor and the switch where I want them to be. So before you make this second corner, make sure those are pretty close to where they need to be. That way you're not digging for slack that isn't there later. And now this is the same thing, you just pull them through. Come right out. That's it. The hard side is done. So now you just move on, you do the same thing on the other side, and it'll go pretty smooth. Okay, so the left side switch is going to be a lot easier to do. Mainly because there's only one wiring harness to pull through and it's small. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my string through first. Go ahead and let it go on down the upright tube now. Pull it out the bottom corner. We can get away with this since there's only the one harness. I still put a little bit of tape around this just to kind of keep our wiring cap from flipping over backwards behind the string or whatever. As you can see, I'm just feeding it in a little bit at the top while I'm pulling it out the bottom. And I can't emphasize this enough. The biggest trick here is get this switch where you want it before you pull the wire all the way through. Get it kind of in position, kind of where it needs to be. That way, you know you're not pulling too much or not enough of the wiring harness out. Once you get it out that corner, just do the same as you did on the other side. Drop your string through. Same deal here, make sure you don't get this where it's tying a knot in itself on its way through. Just pull it out. Done. Okay, so there's some things here that you're going to have to modify underneath your Speedo to make your stock wiring reach. You can purchase a wiring harness extension, but they're about $40, and you can do this for free if you just do what I do here. Also, I'm going to show you, there's a couple of zip strips underneath here. There's one right here going around this hydraulic line, and there's another one right down there. You're gonna have to snip those with your side cutters to allow the hydraulic lines to reach these 13-inch bars. So I'll show you how to get this done. The snipping of the zip strips is pretty self-explanatory. Just cut them off, get them out of the way. Careful not to cut any wires or hoses. And then get those out of there. Okay, and then you've got this little plastic tray here that just organizes these wires nicely. Just pop it out of there. And you actually, your throttle by wire plug here, you can just get it off of there. It's probably hard to see because my hands are right in the way, but when I get done with this, you'll see what I'm trying to show you. Okay, so to get these here off of this plastic shelf so they'll reach your other wires, if you look on the back side of this shelf, you can see you just got to squeeze those tabs together and those things will slide out of there. So a small screwdriver or needle nose pliers, you just reach in and squeeze those tabs together and start sliding them down. And they'll slide right out of here. That's it. Now I typically don't even put that plastic shelf back in there. And now these will be able to reach the handlebars, as you can see. That's pretty much that. Alright, now it's time to put the twist grip sensor plug back on the end of the wiring harness. Basically just backwards of how you took it apart. You got to make sure that you're putting these pins in the right direction as far as rotation goes. And if you look, there's a little titty sticking right off the top here. Those are going to go away from the center of the plug. So just put them back in the same order that you took them out. You can use this video if you lost track of where the wires go, or we actually have some pictures on our website of how to do this. Left to right on the side with the clip would be gray, purple, red. So titty up. When you're pushing it in there, you're going to actually hear the click and feel it. I don't know if you could hear it on the video there or not. And from the bottom side, when you flip it over, it's brown, blue, black. Now that you got all 6 of the wires back in where they need to be, you just push that back down to lock them in place. You know, make sure they're in there, and that's it. Alright, so now we're ready to put the handlebars back on the bike, which is pretty self-explanatory. We just set them in there. And then make sure they're centered. Pretty good. Set your top clamp back on. Make sure your wires aren't being pinched between these clamps. They have a pretty generous hole in the front here, but still, just double check. I've applied some blue Loctite to the bolts. Prior to putting them in. You can refer to a service manual if you want to torque these to the proper torque specs. I just tighten them. Right now I'm not going to completely tighten them though, because we don't know what angle we want the bars on until the customer sets on it. So then you're going to plug your wires back in. This isn't totally necessary, but it's simple enough. I'm just going to put a zip strip around all of this mess to kind of hold it from and that's that. Okay, so to get enough slack on your brake side for your hydraulic line, you're going to have to remove this plug. Off the ignition switch here. Pull it up. Get it on the other side of your brake line. Plug it back in. That's going to gain you an inch or so of brake line. And now, as you can see, your hydraulic lines will reach without extending them, without rebleeding anything. One other thing you got to watch is make sure when you're putting the handlebars on that you actually run that line in front of the handlebars and not underneath it. I've already put the switches back on. I mean, they just clip on there. You should know that from taking it off. Make sure this wiring is routed as it originally was. You definitely don't want to pinch any of that. And then you're going to put everything back together kind of loose for now until you get everything where it goes. So get your grip on there. The front and rear clamshells. Now I'm just going to slightly tighten those, basically just so nothing's falling off. This is a T25 Torx bit. I'm switching it over to a T27. Remove the handlebar control from the crown roll bag and hold it up into position here. Now that little guy there is going to go in that little hole there. And I'm still just going to loosely put everything together for the time being. just so nothing's falling off. When you're rotating these to your preference as far as everything goes here, make sure you're not pulling any wires too tight. As you rotate the switch housing, you're going to pull on those wires, so kind of when you're putting it together, make sure you leave yourself enough slack that you can do that. Now you can go ahead and just tighten it all up. Making sure you're not pinching any wires anywhere. Back to the T25. And then your trip reset button. You can see it's dovetailed in here. Well, I don't know if that's really the right term, but it's dovetailed. You basically just clip it back into place. And this side's done. Now you just do the same thing over on the other side. Alright, same thing on this side. Start out with your grip. Your clamshells. Make sure you get this section over inside your shell here. Switch housings. I'm not going to tighten them up too much, just again like the other side, loosely. I probably don't really need to show you how to do this on both sides, but switch over to a T27 Torx bit. Get everything started kind of loose, and then once you've got everything started, go ahead and tighten them all up. Again, making sure nothing's being pinched. I'm just snugging these right now. I'll come back and tighten everything once I know everything's rotated where we want them. Check for throttle action, make sure it springs back. One thing that we can't control here is the amount of powder coat that our powder coaters apply to the handlebars. Certain grips, Avon for example, are machined with very tight tolerances. It might be possible that you have to remove some of the powder coat underneath the grip if your grip is sticking. It's not a big deal. Grab some sandpaper, sand it off there, emery cloth, scrape it with a razor blade, whatever the case may be. It's rare, but it does happen. Okay, so as you can see, this all reaches with the stock hydraulic lines. There they are. Stock wiring. These are 13-inch rise. And everything fit without buying anything but the handlebars. So next I'll show you how to put the dash back together and put the end caps in, and this bike is done. Okay, so we're getting ready to put the speedometer back on this thing. I've already plugged in the wires on the back. I mean, just plug them back in where they were. You got the three, the one here in the middle, and then those two big black ones on the sides. And just set the thing back down into position where it goes. There's kind of some little alignment pins here on the corners that go into this other piece of plastic that you got to kind of watch for. And put your side screws back in. These are a little bit tricky with the handlebars right in the way, but they go. I'll come back and tighten those up. Okay, now putting the key switch back in, you need to make sure that this little button is still pushed and that this key is still all the way over. And what that does, I'll undo it here so you can see. Watch right here when I turn the key back out of position, how that little lock pops up. So what you're doing to get it out is when you're pushing that down and you rotate the key back, that little detent comes out of the way. So that's really all we're after. Make sure that detent's out of the way. This collar can only go on one way. One of these is fatter than the other, so you just line the fat one up with the fat slot. Which is that way. Put the nut back on the top. And that little detent I just showed you actually ends up catching this groove here that the nut and the collar made. So when you put your key switch back in, you're going to want to hold it at a height that detent will fall into. I prefer to slide the spring over first, just so it's not trying to fall out. Now, this is very important, this next part. You got to make sure you don't get your tumblers out of alignment with this when you're putting it in. Do not turn this until you know it's right where you want it to be. If you end up messing up those tumblers, it's pretty hard to get them straightened back out. There's a special tool for it. I've actually done it with a couple of picks before, but it is not a fun deal. So you want to get that where it belongs and kind of push it down with the spring pressure, raise it up just a little bit and undo your key, and that landed right in that groove. Now, I made it look easy because I've done about 4 million of these, but you'll get it. And then you can verify that your switch works, headlights come on, everything's working. And then just come back and tighten these guys up here. Installation of the billet end caps. You can actually do this on the bench before you put the handlebars on the bike. I prefer not to, just in case you do have a wiring issue, you might have pinched a wire or whatever. You end up having to take them back out. It's better to just wait. So anyway, we have these made on a CNC lathe, and as you can see, there is a little channel behind the flange there, And what that's for is so the silicone, when you glue these in, has something to kind of anchor to. Now, we do get some phone calls about how these fit too loose, blah, blah, blah. We know what we're doing. We deliberately made these fit loose. That way you have a layer of silicone between the end cap and the inside of the handlebar tube. If we make them too tight, it just pushes the silicone out of the way and then they fall out. So we're going to show you how to put these in. Alright, so I've just got ultra black silicone. You can use clear. I like black. Whatever you want to use. What I'm going to do is just squirt a little bit of silicone out on my fingers. Have a rag ready because this is a messy job. So I've got a little bit of silicone on my finger here. I'm just going to smear it around this ledge on the end cap. And you're going to get it on the end cap. Don't worry about it. As long as you get it wiped off before it sets up, it'll wipe right off. Okay. Any extra I've got, I'll just scrape off on the inside of the handlebar tube here. Then we just squish it in there. I'm going to go get my rag, wipe the excess off of this. And even if you have a skim coat of this on there and it dries overnight or whatever, you'll be able to just rub it off with your thumb in the morning. So don't freak out too much about this, but as you can see, it's really easy to just wipe it off while it's still wet. Don't be a sicko. And there it is, glued into place. Now, what we'll do is put a piece of tape on it overnight. So plan ahead on this. If you want to ride the bike, the same day you put the bars on, leave the end caps out until the next day. They really need to set overnight. I just take a piece of masking tape, put it on there to hold it in overnight. Now you just do the other three corners the exact same way and the whole project is done.